Welcome to the Beau Show. I'm broadcasting today's show from the NTD Television Global Headquarters in Manhattan, New York. I want to focus today's show on this cancel culture that we live in, because it's a cultural marker. It shows us where we stand as a society and where we are headed. In general, we've gotten rather soft. And I'll only speak of America because other areas of the world react differently as a culture, but they also look to America to make their own cultural decisions. The idea of American culture has always been one of respect, meaning I will respect your desire to be Buddhist or Jewish or Presbyterian, and I won't try to kill you for it. I respect your right to your beliefs, even if I don't agree with them. In other words, empathy is kind of optional. The goal isn't to get us to agree. The goal is to ensure we all have the opportunity and right to chart our own course. Our words, though important, have a certain protection around them. This is why the founders created the First Amendment to the Constitution. They wanted free-flowing ideas, many of which might be radically different. But they saw what King George did if they questioned him, so they said, hey, in our new country, we have a right to criticize you or anyone else if we disagree. The First Amendment was not intended to make those expressing that right to become a bullseye for those who disagree with you. But in the modern era, we have allowed identity groups to bully culture into acceptance of a particular belief. What began as the gay community wanting equal representation and the ability to get married under the law as we know it has morphed into forcing their belief system into every possible aspect of culture. This has also been true of the Black Lives Matter movement, which has Marxism in its very foundational roots. I will now focus this framework around comedian Dave Chappelle, who has a new Netflix comedy special out right now called The Closer. Chappelle has developed 6 specials for Netflix and began receiving backlash from the transgender community from jokes he made in his 5th stand-up special, Sticks and Stones, which is ironic because that title refers to the idiom, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. In 2019, Chappelle accepted the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor. When he spoke at this awards ceremony, he spoke his mind.
But rather than talk about myself, just briefly, I want to just talk about my genre. Stand-up comedy is an incredibly American genre. I don't think any other country could produce this many comedians. And unbeknownst to many people in this audience, I don't think there's opinion that it exists in this country that is not represented in a comedy club by somebody. Each and every one of you has a champion in the room. We watch you guys fight, but when we're together, we talk it out. I know comics that are very racist, and I watch them on stage, and everyone's laughing, and I'm like, that mother means that. Don't get mad at them, don't hate them. We go upstairs and have a beer, and sometimes I even appreciate the artistry that they paint their racist opinions with. Man, it's not that serious. The First Amendment is first for a reason. The Second Amendment is just in case the first one doesn't work out.
He's really right about this. Stand-up comedy is very American, but he makes a bigger point. It exists because it's the embodiment of the First Amendment, which exists so that we can talk it out and not duke it out. Everyone in the room has a champion. And as an art form, it has to exist so that we can hear all of these opinions, whether they rub us the wrong way or not. Some people enjoy Jeff Foxworthy's redneck humor. Some like Kevin Hart. Some love the political incorrectness of George Carlin or the tawdry humor of Richard Pryor or Eddie Murphy. In that speech, Chappelle goes on to say that it feels like the country has gotten too tight, that we've got to let some air out of the ball. As he talks about the art form of comedy, he says it is the truth, and you are obstructing it. He will fight for this art form because he believes it's about honesty. Dave also talks about something his mom told him as a kid.
I was a soft kid. I was sensitive, I'd cry easy, and I would be scared to fist fight. And my mother used to tell me this thing, I don't even know if you remember, but you said this to me more than once. You said, son, sometimes you have to be a lion so you can be the lamb you really are. I talk this like a lion. I'm not afraid of any of you. When it comes word to word, I will gab with the best of them, just so I can chill and be me. And that's why I love my art form, because I understand every practitioner of it. Whether I agree with them or not, I know where they're coming from. They want to be heard. They got something to say. There's something they notice. They just want to be understood. I love this genre. It saved my life.
I thought that was pretty profound. To be the lion so that you can be the lamb. And here is where I think society is. Politically correct culture and wokeism have destroyed many art forms, from comedy to music to TV and film. Rather than risk offending someone, we have obstructed truth. I remembered the famous Channel 4 interview of Dr. Jordan Peterson, where he talks about this. Take a look.
You cited freedom of speech in that. Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like, you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
Well, I'm very glad I put you on the spot.
Well,
I'm very glad that I have exercised my freedom of speech.
You get my point. It's like you're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on. So and that is what you should do. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
So you haven't sat there and... I'm just trying to work that out. I mean...
Ha, gotcha.
You have got me. You have got me. I'm trying to work that through in my head. Yeah, it took a while. It took a while.
It did, yeah.
It took a while.
Peterson here says something about freedom of speech that is so critical, that we have to risk being offensive to be able to think and to pursue truth. And if you will recall, what put Peterson on the map was his refusal to bow down to the Canadian government taking control of linguistics regarding trans people's pronouns. Not that he wouldn't use the pronouns, but that the government forced him to. He said that the leftist activists are just like Mao, who made group identity the most important thing. So let's go back to Chappelle now with some context, who many in the LGBTQIA++ community want to cancel. They want his Netflix special and his career gone just for his comedic observations about this community. Mind you, they keep adding letters to this acronym because it never seems to be enough. Chappelle has said, quote, "Political correctness has its place. We all want to live in a polite society. We just kind of have to work on the levels of coming to an agreement of what that actually looks like. I personally am not afraid of other people's freedom of expression. I don't use it as a weapon. It just makes me feel better. And I'm sorry if I hurt anybody," unquote. So here are the brass tacks. Speech is being used as a weapon to take down people's careers and livelihoods, all because someone got offended. Getting offended is not something you can file a police report over. It is not a crime to offend. In fact, it's probably quite necessary so that we can get some uncomfortable truths out of the way. In this new Netflix special, Chappelle asks, "How much do I have to participate in your self-image?" He makes the argument that it was easier for Bruce Jenner to change his gender than Cassius Clay to change his name. Chappelle also came to the defense of Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling, who is a radical feminist and who has argued that gender is a biological fact. And so they called her a TERF, which is an acronym for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. In his special, Chappelle says, quote, "Every human being in this room, every human being on earth had to pass through the legs of a woman to be on earth. That is a fact." This is such an interesting point about intersectionality. You have liberals in the gay community who want trans women to be considered women. And then you have liberal feminists who don't include trans women in their pursuit of feminist ideals and the empowerment of a biological woman. So do you see how convoluted this is? The left can't even agree on their own intersectionality. And then when you throw race into the mix, it gets even fuzzier. In this Netflix special, Chappelle also talks about the rapper DaBaby, who made homophobic comments at a recent Miami concert, which forced him to apologize, and it actually got him pulled from Lollapalooza. The irony, Chappelle notes, is DaBaby, whose real name is Jonathan Kirk, shot and killed a 19-year-old in a Walmart in 2018. And he's received more career retribution from these homophobic comments than shooting and killing someone in Walmart. Chappelle talks about empathy and how it doesn't belong to any one community. And that's an astute observation. After all, this is not a competition to see who can play the victim or oppression card harder. These days, it really does seem to be like a contest, doesn't it? Chappelle closes his commentary about cancel culture and a truce with this community by saying the following, quote, "I'm not telling another joke about you until we are both sure that we are laughing together. I'm telling you, I'm done. I'm done talking about it. All I ask from your community, with all humility, will you please stop punching down on my people," unquote. And we hear this phrase a lot nowadays, punching down. That is the notion that people of a certain privileged class get to punch down on a lower class of people. Chappelle got accused of punching down on the gay community. So he's challenging that and saying they are punching down on him. This does indicate, once again, that there are classes of people divided along lines to see who can be more offended, which is exactly what Mao created with class warfare. The difference is that here we seek to cancel people. In China, they just killed them. Here were some reactions to Chappelle's special. From Dear White People former showrunner Jacqueline Moore, a transgender person, posted this: "So Netflix, I'm done." She is now boycotting Netflix. But remember, she ran a show titled Dear White People, so it's okay to ridicule one group of people, just not hers. GLAAD posted that Chappelle's brand has become synonymous with ridiculing trans people and other marginalized communities. Okay, so what do you want him to do? Not make observations about real life? Ron White and Jeff Foxworthy make fun of rednecks. Actually, every comedian makes fun of white people. And white people continue to watch this comedy. They can take the joke. The National Black Justice Coalition posted that Netflix should know better, since 2021 is on track to be the deadliest for black transgender people. Netflix should immediately pull the closer, they say. Now, wait a minute. Black people of all walks are killed every day in Chicago, and they pick Dave Chappelle as aiding and abetting black trans deaths. That makes no sense. If they wanted justice, they'd be looking in their own communities, especially Chicago. There they are, demanding blood from Dave Chappelle. When Chappelle received a standing ovation after a premiere of his special at the Hollywood Bowl, he remarked, quote, "If this is what being canceled is like, I love it. F Twitter, F NBC News, ABC News, all these stupid-ass networks, I'm not talking to them, I'm talking to you. This is real life," unquote. At this event, even Stevie Wonder came on stage to say, quote, "What we need to cancel is hate. What we need to cancel is fear, because we have to love, and we should never cancel that. I want us to cancel the idea of feeling that we don't want anyone to laugh, because if we don't laugh, we cry. And I don't believe that was God's intention, ever," unquote. Even Chappelle later that night gave the following charge. He said this: "Do something nice for someone who looks nothing like you." So you see, in all of this, a community has cherry-picked its offense. They get offended by real-life comedy, an art form that makes fun of everyone. And they put trans people into the comedic spotlight. And so in response, they have gone for the jugular. But if Chappelle's heart genuinely expresses itself by saying, "Do something nice for someone who looks nothing like you," that's about as inclusive as it gets. And I want to make a point about comedy as a whole. If you hated a group of people, black, white, gay, Muslim, whatever, if you really hated them, and your whole act was nothing but a bigoted diatribe, no one would come see it. It wouldn't be funny. Comedy, and I'll include music in this as well, are forms of artistic expression about real life. With music, it may move us, and with comedy, it makes us laugh. And if we can't have a little fun and humor poking fun at society and how soft we have become, what do we have anymore? Well, we have Maoist China. We have Afghanistan, where a village musician was just killed recently because they don't allow music. If comedy is truly an authentically American art form, we are losing it. The gay community went after Kevin Hart, and they pulled him from hosting the Oscars. It's like, God forbid if you ever made a joke in your life. It doesn't mean you hate gay people. It just means you found something funny about life. Remember that white people as a whole are the brunt of many, many Chappelle jokes, as well as many black comedians. That's totally fine. I'm a big fan of comedian Dion Cole, and he makes fun of white people, black people, his gay cousin, women, men, you name it. In order to preserve the art form, we have to respect its expression about life. I did a recent show about Norm Macdonald. Remember how he was fired from Saturday Night Live because he wouldn't let up on O.J. Simpson for being a murderer. He was speaking the truth in a comedic way, but SNL got too sensitive and didn't like it. Norm had a dry bluntness about him, but which was also funny. We've become a weak society of offended sheep. We have insulated ourselves in preservative shells where people find strength in some form of group identity, which then goes on to attack other communities in the name of fairness or justice or equity, which again means elevating their group by reducing another group. When it comes to punching down, if the gay community can get Kevin Hart removed as host from the Oscars, who exactly is doing the punching down? Dave Chappelle is not advocating violence or harm of any trans person. In fact, he said the opposite of that. But just because he argues that gender is a biological fact and not a societal construct does not mean he hates anyone. But when you offend trans people, they come after you with all the violence and vitriol in the world. Do you remember what a trans person said to Ben Shapiro?
So you don't know what you're talking about. You're not educated on genetics.
Would you like to discuss the genetics? Or
well, no,
what
no.
are your genetics?
So I'd stay away from the genetics and back to the brain scans.
You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Yeah, that seems mildly inappropriate for a political discussion.
This is the famous show where Shapiro said, "Facts don't care about your feelings," which was a shot heard around the world. I don't hear Chappelle or anyone calling for anyone to go home in an ambulance. Trans activists will claim that comedy aimed at trans people will create more deaths. But I think comedy does the opposite of that. It allows an artist, the comedian, to make an observation and talk it out in a way that allows us to laugh rather than hate. I mean, isn't that the point? That's why Chappelle wants to make sure we are all on the same page of laughing together and not being so sensitive. Has there been a spree of trans hate crimes spilling out from the theaters where Chappelle is performing? No. Yet what does Yahoo News do? Check out this article called 10 LGBTQ Comedians to Watch Who Aren't Dave Chappelle. Dahlia Bell, a black trans comedian, said, quote, "He's building a new legacy out of mocking the existence of trans people while also erasing the experience of black trans women. To him, being black and being pro-black isn't something he can comprehend outside his own perspective as a cisgender, heterosexual black man," unquote. Think about this comment. This person is reducing Dave Chappelle's experience for being a black hetero man, as if that experience is less than the experience of a black trans female, rather than identifying with their mutual profession of comedy and pushing boundaries and preserving the art form. Dahlia Bell identifies more with the trans community to create another spat and bifurcation. This is why radical leftist ideology always, and I mean always, creates more harm and division than good. It uses class, race, or group differences to pit people against one another. And it's antithetical to the idea of, I fundamentally disagree with you, but I'll defend your right to say it. That is not what trans activists are about. They're not defending your right to say anything or even express yourself in the art form of comedy. They do the opposite. They seek destruction of your career. They seek the restriction of speech and expression. They try to shame Netflix for hosting the Chappelle special. Dave Chappelle used to play a character called Tyrone Biggums, a crack addict. Do you see people in the crack community, and I'm being facetious about this and calling them a community, but do you see them whining and complaining about Dave Chappelle? No. But the gay and trans communities have some power, so they flex that power for their own gain. Then look at Black Lives Matter, a Marx-inspired group that has found powerful bedfellows in Hollywood and the media. Then, of course, you have the feminists and the Me Too movement. Some of these groups intersect, and some want nothing to do with each other. Because I repeat, leftist groupthink has a draconian, authoritative quality to it. Rather than celebrating the individual and the freedom we have to pursue our lives and passions, they find power in identity groups and they mobilize them. I realize everyone wants a sense of belonging, of acceptance. I also understand the freedom to associate and to congregate among people of mutually shared values. But that doesn't mean you should weaponize identity for your profit and someone else's demise. We all want a polite society, sure. I will argue in favor of that. But guess what? Not everyone is polite. Furthermore, in order to find any modicum of truth in this world, we have to be willing to risk offending others, even if unintentional. And we have to risk being offended. We all know there is truth in comedy, even if it's exaggerated. It must be preserved as a form of expression. And we all know that laughter trumps hate. People that go see Chappelle or any stand-up act want to find the sometimes uncomfortable observations of humdrum life. We have to be able to laugh at our own expense. We are all laughing together, even if we are targeted sometimes. Stand-up clubs are not bastions of hate or violence. They're places for us to actually release the tension, to hear truths we can't talk about at the office. People go to escape, but to have some sort of restricted version of comedy, like a safe space, is going to kill the very reason the comedy exists. Look, Donald Trump. He was made fun of by every major comedian, but still not only laughed at himself, like with Jimmy Fallon tousling his hair, or his infamous Kofefi tweet, but he's also an unexpected comedian himself. And his unfiltered comedy is one of many reasons he became so popular. We cannot filter out truth. We have to be able to laugh at truth and life. It's what will keep us sane. So we can't just succumb to every new identity group that gets offended and calls for blood. We have to push back on that and fight for freedom of expression. The arts have a special place in representing societal norms and the exchange or interpretation of ideas. It's as American as apple pie, but they're in danger. I hope Netflix doesn't go woke, which they are certainly prone to, and just stands up to the weaponization of speech and expression. And let this serve as a marker of where we are as a society and how we cancel culture. I'm Beau, and that's the show.